Reading with your kids.
Hey, so great to see you. Come on in. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast, coming to you from the beautiful Reading with Your Kids studios in the delightful little neighborhood of Reedville. Where else would the Reading with Your Kids podcast come from? I mean, really? We are very, very happy to be here in Boston, Massachusetts, and we're very, very happy to have Laura Roettiger on our show tonight. She's here to introduce us to her wonderful STEM book, Aliana Reaches for the Moon. Hey, for all the authors that are listening out there, I wanted to share with you this great email that we received here at the Reading with Your Kids podcast from Dr. Linda Mubarak. She is a past guest and the author of Maxine's New Job. Here's the email. Dear Fatima and Jed, good news! Maxine's New Job has been nominated to receive the prestigious Henri Award at the 2018 Christian Literacy Awards for Outstanding Literacy Work in the Children's Book Division. I sincerely believe your certifying Maxine as a great read helped bring increased social media attention to the book. Thank you for the exposure and the great marketing. We are so happy for Dr. Linda Mubarak that her book, Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read, Maxine's New Job, received this prestigious recognition. We would love to help your book receive that same kind of recognition. If you are interested in having your book considered for our Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read program, please visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. You can click on the contact button, send us a note, and we'll send all the information back to you, or you can go right to our Certified Great Read page on our website. It's fun, it's easy, and it is really an effective way to let the world know that your book stands out above all the rest. The Reading with the Kids Certified Great Read program. Joining us on the line right now from Boulder in Colorado, she is the author of a beautiful new picture book called Aliana Reaches for the Moon. Please welcome to the show, Laura Roettiger. Laura, how are you?
I'm well. Thanks for having me on your show.
Oh, you're very welcome. We're really happy to have you on. I'm really excited and eager to learn all about Aliana Reaches for the Moon.
Wonderful. I'm happy to share about it. It's a book about a little girl who notices how bright the full moon is in her room, the light from the full moon. And she spends a month learning about the moon from books and experimenting with light and reflection to create a surprise at the end of the book.
Very cool. Very cool. This sounds like a great storybook, but also with a lot of it's a great way for kids to learn a lot about the moon.
Correct. Yeah. There's a STEM connection, and we were able to get endorsements from two different astronomers for the book. One from an astronomer at Adler Planetarium in Chicago, which is where I used to live. Mm-hmm. And the other is from the Challenger Center, which is an education center. There's 40 of them around the country.
Wonderful, wonderful. I have to ask, what was that like getting that recognition from such prestigious institutions?
It was very exciting. You work on a book and you share it with people who you know and who are going to say nice things because they love you or they're also working on the book. And one of the endorsements was the first time that somebody who had no stake in the book and didn't know me at all, sent back, wonderful feedback. If I had, asked somebody to write something, it was pretty much what she said, and then even better. So, it was wonderful.
That's really fantastic. What inspired you to write Aliana Reaches for the Moon?
Well, when I moved to the Rocky Mountains, having lived in an area before that was city and suburban, we don't have the light pollution here. So when the moon is full, it is very bright in my house. And being a city girl, I didn't realize at first where the light was coming from. I thought I was used to street lights, and I had lived in the city for the last 7 years and then moved to a place right now. I'm looking out a window that's looking at National Forest. Mm-hmm. So we're really in the middle of nowhere, not exactly in Boulder, but in Boulder County. And so the light of the moon coming in from different windows, and I have a lot of floor to ceiling windows, and they're not skylights, but windows that are very close to the ceiling and very high ceilings. It created this image of light and shadows in my house, and it inspired me to write the book.
I have to tell you, you can't see. We're through the magic of Skype and technology. I'm actually looking at Laura right now, and every time she refers to the moon and the beauty of the moon and the light, I can see her looking off up into the sky. It's really cool because there's a real joy when you're speaking about it, and kind of the word childish is meant to be judgmental sometimes, but I mean it in a really pure way. You have this really beautiful kind of childish connection to the moon and to this relatively new thing that's in your life. I know growing up in the city, there's the moon is up there, but it's hard to tell which one is the stoplight, street light, and which one is the moon because they're about the same brightness sometimes.
Exactly. And I have been called childlike, and I take that as a compliment. So thanks for noticing.
Well, you're very, very welcome. I too have been called childlike, not always in a complimentary way, but like you, I take it as a compliment because, turn lemons into lemonade. That's what I say.
Exactly.
How, one of the things that's interesting and is I know a lot of folks who grew up in cities, whether it's here in the States or overseas, when they find themselves in a rural area, when there is all the stars and the lights, they have a completely different reaction. They're kind of like, oh, this is kind of creepy. I want to get out of here. It's so cool that you find yourself in this beautiful national forest and you're just loving it.
Right. It is very beautiful. I share a lot of my photography on my blog and on Facebook and Twitter and so forth. And I often get feedback from people who are amazed at the views that I have. So I get beautiful sunrises almost every morning coming over the mountain peaks. And I can't actually see sunset unless I leave my house. Because of the way the house is built into the mountain. But I really have been enjoying and inspired by a lot of different nature since I've moved here.
Speaking of inspiring, our podcast is all about inspiring parents and grandparents and other caregivers to read more with their kids and read more with their kids of every age, not just the kids we associate with reading aloud, the babies, the pre-readers, but with everybody. Now, before you came to Boulder or the Boulder area, you were a reading specialist, a teacher. From your perspective as someone who specialized in reading and helping, I imagine, reluctant readers and kids with challenges become successful readers, how important was it from your perspective for parents and caregivers to read aloud with their kids?
It's very important to read with your children. So whether that means you are reading or your child is reading or you're reading together, all of those ways of reading are very valuable to a child because it's making reading an important piece of what they're doing. Also, it shares with a child that you value reading. Mm-hmm. I taught at a school that was predominantly Spanish-speaking parents, and I was able to get books in English and Spanish so that my students would read a book in English and their parent could read the same book in Spanish, and they would be able to have conversations about it. And I told parents it didn't matter if they talked about the book in English or Spanish as long as they talked about the book. And I sometimes would give them suggestions how to talk about it. But beyond that, we really had just allowed them to enjoy reading. So I read with my children when they were able to read to themselves, and it was a great shared experience.
It really is, and it just my daughter was somebody that I read to, and my son, but my daughter and I really cherished that time together, and I remember her second grade teacher saying to me, she can read by herself, but she needs to read with you, so don't forget to do that. And my daughter was very diligent, saying, okay, it's time for us to read. The teacher said so, and that carried on. And in fact, we still do co-read sometimes. We'll read the same book and share ideas. But one of the things we do right now, she's a 23-year-old young woman, and she's out and she's a professional, but very oftentimes we'll sit down and we'll watch the same TV show together and not just sit there, but we'll have conversations about it. We're watching the new Netflix, Maria Kondo, the Japanese woman who teaches everybody how to tidy up their home. And we just had this, the show is like a half an hour long, and we ended up having a 45-minute conversation about it. And it was just wonderful.
That's great. Yeah. I have, it's interesting that you mentioned Marie Kondo because, I actually haven't seen the show. I've seen the book, but the idea of tidying up, which I, think is wonderful, but it in some ways goes against my idea of allowing children to be creative and messy, which is one of the themes in my book. So I recently wrote a blog post about why it's okay to let children be messy. And one of the endorsements I got was that the book shows how science can be messy and parents need to allow that. Yeah. So I had quite a bit of, I did a little bit more research for this blog post about why creativity and curiosity are so important to develop in young children, why those skills will serve them so much better as they get older and in school and in the job market.
So elaborate on that, please. What's the connection between the messy room and the creative mind? Or am I just imagining that because my room's messy sometimes?
No, that's exactly right. I do feel like creative people tend to be a little bit messier. And as a parent, oftentimes you just want everything back in the game pieces all in the box and everything off the floor and everything put away at the end of the day. But oftentimes they're working on something and it might take them several days, or they might leave it out and it will inspire them to do something else later. And I think that's really important. So, and that's what happens in the book is the parents have to be patient because she spends a whole month experimenting with things and what they think is a mess and she thinks is a masterpiece. Mm-hmm. So
can you share with us one of those experiments that Aliana did in the book during that month?
Sure. She uses different things that reflect light, and sometimes she's using light from outside, sometimes she's using a flashlight, sometimes she's using mirrors to reflect the light and create different shapes.
Fascinating.
Thank you. She has to be patient because she's creating something, waiting for the full moon for the next time, and her parents have to be patient. So it's a little bit layered in terms of the messages of both of them both parents and Aliana are being patient. And her brother, Gustavo, whose birthday is coming up, is also being patient, waiting for his birthday.
That's really, really cool. As you're talking about reflecting light and doing experiments, I can't remember how old I was, but I remember being absolutely blown away when the words finally made sense in my mind that the moon doesn't light up, that it was actually reflecting the light from the sun. And that was just like, just one of those moments, just kind of mind blasted kind of moment.
Exactly. And the fact that the moon doesn't change shape over a lunar cycle. So that's, I have a teacher back matter in the book, and there's the teacher in me, but It's meant to allow parents or teachers to share about the phases of the moon, and how the moon is always a sphere, just as Earth is. And the only reason it appears to change shape is because the amount of light that's reflecting from the sun and where it is in relationship to the sun and the Earth.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I guess it's true. You can take the teacher out of the classroom, but you can't take the teacher out of the person.
That's right. And I still am in a classroom one day a week here, mm-hmm. And which has been very fun for me to have that relationship with kids. And when I come in, they're excited to see me and so on. But but I don't have to be at school at 7 o'clock, 5 days a week anymore. So that's been allowed me the time to enjoy nature, to write this book, and to do some other things.
And it's probably also helped you reconnect with that love of teaching that you first felt when you started many years ago.
Sure. I haven't actually taught. I went back to school and got a master's in teaching, when my children were, between like 10 and 15. So I didn't actually go, I hadn't been teaching, straight through. Mm-hmm. So
what's it feel like as an author, knowing what you know about reading and how important it is and how kids react to it and how a good book can really change their life and inspire them in some ways? How does it feel to be on the other side of that equation, as the one who is creating this tool that may just inspire the next astronomer?
Right. I'm hoping that's the case. That's, of course that's part of the goal. My goal is to get the book into as many children's hands as possible, whether that's through, them buying the book or ordering it from a library or hearing it at school or whatever it is. I feel like there's a lot, of inspiration in the book, mm-hmm. in terms of encouraging creativity and curiosity, learning patience. There's a huge aspect of kindness in the story as well. When I was a teacher, I truly felt valued every day, mm-hmm. from my students. There was immediate feedback that I was making a difference. And that's probably as gratifying as anything that you can find. Mm-hmm. I know that with writing a book, the feedback is not going to be immediate. It's a totally different thing, but I'm hoping it will be similar in terms of making a difference in the lives of children.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And it's you may not have considered this yet, but it's one of the great things about writing a book is that it has the ability to live on long after you.
Sure.
That's
a good point.
Yeah, that's really exciting. Well, another thing that's exciting is your website. You've put together a wonderful website. Why don't you tell us where folks can find it and also tell us a little bit about what they're going to find there?
My website, it's Laura, Laura, Roettiger, ROETTIGER, books.com. And I have a lot of my photography is on the website, photography mostly of nature, and also my puppy. I have a golden doodle named Charlie, and he is turning 1 this week, so he's also featured in my blog. I have a lot of events coming up, and those are on my website as well. Some background information about me and about the book. So right now the endorsements are on there. I'm hoping to get some more reviews posted as they come in. But I've had a lot of activity with my blog. I've been blogging for almost 2 years and have a lot of people who, have started commenting and they're interested in, I don't write a lot on my blog. I write a lot of haiku and a little bit of other free verse poetry, but most of my blog is photography. And I've really enjoyed that since I've moved here and have, beauty surrounding me.
Yeah. Oh, now, before we go, one of the things that you mentioned on the website is that your superpower is encouraging curiosity in children. If you could just kind of remind us again, why is it? So you talked about how we can inspire our kids to be curious by letting them be a little bit messy. But why is that so important for us to do for our kids?
Right. Well, I have, I did some research about that, and it turns out that when you remind yourself when you have a young child and they're always asking why, and sometimes I know that can be annoying, but what they're really asking you is how things work, and they're trying to understand their world. And if you allow them to, when I was a child, we'd go to the library to look it up. And now kids look it up, online, but you're creating neural pathways of information. So that question of wonder, that experience of wanting to learn is very important. And then feeding that desire to learn is what creates the ability, to be a leader if they're learning things that help them, leadership skills or empathy. It helps them if they're observing things and then making predictions about what will happen. Those are the skills that would lead into careers in engineering and science.
Awesome. Well, we've been talking today to the author of Aliana Reaches for the Moon, Laura Roettiger. Laura, thank you so much for being our guest tonight.
Thank you.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Danielle Dufayet. I love her name. Danielle Dufayet will be here. We hope you will be here with us too. I am just so very, very happy. The listenership to the podcast, our Reading with Your Kid podcast family, keeps growing and growing and growing. And that is due to a large part of all the support that we're getting from our guests and from our listeners. If you haven't already done so, because we love even more folks to become part of our Reading with Your Kids family, because the more folks who are listening to this podcast, that means the more folks that are reading to their kids and making a positive difference in their kids' lives, making a positive difference in the world. So you can help us in a number of different ways. First off, you can subscribe to the show. We love folks who subscribe to the show at the iHeartRadio podcast app. We love iHeartRadio. They've been such great supporters of the show. Of course, wherever you get your podcast from, we would love it if you could subscribe to us. We don't want you to miss an episode. And if you get your podcast from a number of different platforms where you can subscribe to us on every single platform, that would be awesome. And if you could write us a 5-star review, that really helps too, especially over at Apple Podcasts. That's a great way to help other folks learn about the program, learn about all the wonderful guests that we have here, and inspire them to read with their kids. We want to thank Laura Roettiger for being with us today. Of course, we want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Thank you so much for taking the time to subscribe to the show. And thank you so much, most of all, for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.